Episode 11. Thrashing Up Kelvin Brown. Alex raised her head and stared at the person standing before her, blocking her way forward. He was from the same group of people who had thrashed her up the other day. She specifically remembered this particular person. Amongst the several people who had beaten her up at that time, he had been the most vicious one. Seeing him once more, she could almost visualize the scene where the previous owner of the body had been beaten to death by them. Her eyes darkened, and she said in a chilling tone, "Get out of my way." The person standing in her way was Kelvin Brown, a member of the topmost family in Pyron Town. The Brown family was one of the most powerful families on Cartier Island, and their ancestors had almost reached the level of the revered spirit paragon. Hence, they did not think much of the Johnson family. After all, in the Johnson family, only Dorian Johnson was powerful, while the Brown family had many powerful individuals. The confrontation between Kelvin and Alex quickly attracted several people who crowded around them. Although they feared offending Alex, the curiosity to watch the show unfolding before them took over, and they all decided to watch from the side so as not to get into any trouble. When Kelvin saw that so many people had crowded around them, he said with a taunting laugh, "Alex, are you going to look for Augustus again? Are you still going to bother him like this? Haven't you learned your lesson from the thrashing we gave you? How could you be so shameless? As a man, why are you sticking to Augustus so persistently? You're outrageously shameless." Kelvin's words elicited a roar of laughter from the crowd. Their eyes were all on Alex, and the mockery in their eyes was obvious. Alex stared at Kelvin, her eyes seething with anger. Kelvin, however, was not intimidated by her angry glare. He got people to bring him a bench, and he put one foot on it and said, "If you want to pass, I will allow it. Here, crawl under this, and I will not stop you." As he spoke, he pointed at the space under his raised leg. Alex continued to glare at Kelvin, not saying a word. She stood on the spot, unmoving. If it were the previous owner of the body, she would have flown into a rage immediately. "Why? Not going to crawl? You don't want to, or you dare not do it. If you are so gutless, that will also mean that your so-called grandfather, General Dorian, is just as spineless as you are." Kelvin looked at Alex, fully intent on ridiculing him. Never in his wildest dreams would he have foreseen what unfolded next. He had not expected that Alex would suddenly charge towards him and swiftly grab his shirt, holding him down. Next, Alex quickly kicked Kelvin fiercely in the groin, and a shrill scream tore out of his throat before he fell over onto the ground, curling up tightly like a deflated ball. Not a single person there had expected that Alex would suddenly retaliate. No one could foresee how Alex had suddenly appeared right before Kelvin. By the time they were able to react, Kelvin was already writhing on the ground. It was thought that Alex would stop at that, but she jabbed a knee into Kelvin's back as she knelt, and with a grab, Alex twisted Kelvin's right arm before finally giving it a sharp tug. A loud crack could be heard, and a scream suddenly tore through the entire academy's grounds. "I have no time to play with you today. Do not appear before my eyes again, or I will beat you to a pulp every time I see you," Alex said calmly as she got up from Kelvin's back. She gave him 2 sharp kicks before she slowly turned and left. Everyone was utterly shocked, and they were all dumbfounded for a long while. Was that the same Alex who was well known to be timid and weak, and perceived as nothing but just a lustful and infatuated moron? The news about the ruckus that happened in front of the seniors' classrooms spread quickly throughout the entire academy. Not a single one of the students could believe what they heard. If the ones who brought them the news had not sworn and pledged upon a myriad of things, ascertaining the authenticity of the news, no one would have believed a word of it. In a tower not too far away, 2 men were observing the commotion, and one of them was the very same man whom Alex had met earlier, Sir Richard. "That is one ferocious little one there," Sir Richard said with a big smile when he saw Alex's moves. But he could not help but cringe when he remembered where that first kick had landed. "What made you agree to let him join your class?" the man beside Sir Richard asked him. "Just intuition," he replied. "See, didn't he just show you that he is nothing like what the rumors said about him? The speed that he moved at earlier when he attacked? Whew, I am really curious about him. When he saw me earlier, he did not display any sign of infatuation or sleazy lust that those rumors mentioned. It's up to you. Since I managed to get you to come, I'll leave all these issues in your hands to handle," the man said. Headmaster, do you really trust me that much? Aren't you afraid I'll lead those students astray? Sir Richard asked, looking seriously at the other man. What is there to be afraid of? Don't I know you well enough? The headmaster walked away from the window and sat back in his chair. He had been discussing some things with Sir Richard earlier before he was dragged to the window to witness Alex beating someone up. If you're not afraid, then I have nothing to fear. I'll leave now and go see the unfortunate students that will be ending up in my hands, Sir Richard said. Your class consists of a bunch of the most gifted kids we have among the entire batch. Take it easy on them. All right, I'll try to. I will make sure they have an unforgettable time here, Sir Richard said as he left the headmaster's office immediately. Alex headed to the classrooms to look for Elijah. Before she could reach the classrooms, she suddenly saw Elijah rush out of his class. He didn't even notice Alex, whom he had just passed by. Elijah, where are you rushing to? Alex quickly reached out, grabbing her brother by the arm to ask. Alex, what are you doing here? Elijah asked in shock when he saw Alex there. I came here to find you, she answered with a smile. You were running so fast. Where are you going? I heard that you got into an altercation with Kelvin Brown, and that it even escalated into a fight. I was running over there to see if you were hurt, Elijah said. Alex was beaming happily as she replied, Elijah, be rest assured, I am not hurt. In fact, I gave Kelvin a good thrashing. Really? Of course. I'm standing right here in front of you, aren't I? Alex said. That's good to hear. Elijah heaved a sigh of relief and then went on to ask, What did you come here for anyway? Oh, I came here to tell you something. Alex told him about her being demoted to a lower grade and that she would also be boarding at the academy. Then she continued to say, I intend to go back and inform grandfather about it, and I will move into the dormitory tomorrow. Well, since you've already made your decision, we'll leave it at that. Come, let me send you back, Elijah said thoughtfully. There's no need. I'm not a child anymore. I can go back on my own. See you later. Alex waved her hand awkwardly and quickly turned to leave. Elijah watched as Alex departed, and he let out a sigh. He felt that ever since the last trashing, this little brother of his has really become more sensible. Moreover, now that he can manifest, he might catch up with him very soon. If he wanted to continue to be able to protect him, he would have to work harder. A flash of determination could be seen in his eyes as he turned and walked back to his classroom. Alex wasn't very familiar with the academy, but as she followed the main path and directions illustrated on the signposts, she found herself standing before the majestic main gate once again. When she saw that the entrance was filled with many people, she remembered that this was the second day of the selection process. The next one, Andrew Edwards, the examiner shouted towards the group in front of him. At this time, within the group, a young man came to the front and followed the examiner's instructions by putting his hand on a crystal ball. Alex watched with much interest and saw that when Andrew poured his spiritual power into it, the crystal ball emitted a deep red and green glow. Oh my God, he actually has dual attributes. This time, our academy has a double-faceted spirit master. Great! Ha 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 ha! The examiner was ecstatic when he saw the reaction of the crystal ball. He couldn't help but laugh out loud and bellow to the person beside him. Run, quickly! Go tell the headmaster that we've discovered a double-faceted spirit master. Soon, as if summoned by the wind, a man swiftly arrived, and from her memories, Alex recognized him as the headmaster of the academy. Where's the new student who's also a double-faceted spirit master? He asked as soon as he arrived, and saw the examiner pointing excitedly to Andrew. The headmaster flashed a large smile and walked up to greet him. He then guided him into the academy. Alex could not help but sneer. This man was quite a character. When he saw that she was trash, he had a sour face, and now, when there was a genius presented before him, he put on a smile that irked her tremendously. The examiner soon called for the next person, and as she continued to watch, she discovered that the selection consisted of only one round, the crystal ball test. Upon injecting their spiritual power into the crystal ball, they would be able to see their attributes. The deeper the color, the higher the talent. Each time, the crystal ball had reacted this way when Andrew placed his hands on it. Such an incredible reaction garnered respect and awe from everyone present. She also observed from everyone around her that in this selection, there were no other double-faceted spirit masters. After a while, She no longer felt any curiosity in the selection round and turned to leave. Suddenly, she heard gasps and loud exclamations from behind her. My God, there's a trio-faceted Spirit Master. It's really 3 colors. We got to witness this moment. The crowd watching him got extremely excited. Episode 12. The First Advancement. This time, there was a huge outburst from the crowd. The people started shouting out loud in shock and disbelief. There hasn't been a trio-faceted Spirit Master in the Academy for hundreds of years. What could be more exciting than this? And here, just moments before, a dual-faceted Spirit Master had been discovered. The examiner was vibrating with excitement. This year, they've just discovered a dual-faceted Spirit Master, and moments later, a trio-faceted Spirit Master. He could not help but pinch himself to determine if he was dreaming or not. Alex turned and saw a lone figure that was not affected by all this bustle and excitement. This person stood beside the crystal ball and watched the people around her who were excited about her. She looked as if she was watching a spectacle, and as if the matter had nothing to do with her at all. She was very detached and stood there with no expression. Nothing could be seen on her face, no feeling of pride, joy, or amusement. Alex could see that she harbored endless loneliness, and there seemed to be a trace of hatred hidden within. The girl felt someone staring at her and turned to look, expecting to see the same crazed fervor as the rest. Instead, she saw the calm and clear eyes of Alex looking back at her. They stood far apart, but their gazes locked for at least half a minute, until the girl retracted her gaze, turned to look at the examiner, and said, "Excuse me, I've already passed. Can I go in now?" Of course. However, yours is a special case, so you don't need to go in like the rest. Wait here, and another examiner will come and guide you in. We have a special arrangement for you," the examiner quickly answered. All right. The lady gave a superfluous answer and turned to look at Alex again. However, she found that he had already left the area. She could only see his back as he got lost further into the crowd. Alex returned to her home and went to look for her grandfather immediately. However, she was told that he was in the palace at the moment. So she returned to her room to continue reading and manifesting. The night before, she felt that there was progress in her manifestation skills, and she believed that she was just a few steps away from becoming a full-fledged Spirit Master. At that time, she would finally be able to bind the ring that her father had left behind for her. After all, having an interspatial ring such as this was much more convenient. She warned Emery and Stella that they were not to disturb her under any circumstances. She also locked the door from the inside, ensuring that no one would interrupt her during this crucial period. She sat down in meditation as she concentrated on sensing the surrounding spiritual forces. It was now much easier to sense these spiritual forces than before. The book that she had read earlier was a book she had casually picked out. This had coincided with what she was looking for, being a basic guide to manifestation for Spirit Masters. Alex concentrated on the red orbs of light flowing around her and slowly guided them into her body, gathering them in her lower abdomen. The multiple array of various colored orbs danced all around her. However, only the red ones could enter her body. At the same time, the ornately carved wooden box in the corner of her room emitted a glow, from within which assisted in her manifestation. When Dorian returned home and heard that his granddaughter was looking for him, he went over to her courtyard. However, when he arrived, he could feel the fluctuations in his surroundings and knew that she was manifesting at the moment. No need to interrupt her at this time. He called Emery over to ensure that no one would disturb Alex. He left her courtyard and went back to his rooms. It's really true. She can manifest. Dorian felt exhilarated as he walked towards his courtyard, unable to suppress the smile on his face. Alex was intently manifesting, so much so that this time around, she would not wake up until 2 days later. She felt refreshed and rejuvenated, as if a warm stream was flowing within her, and gentle energy was circulating throughout the energy channels within her whole body. Her eyes snapped open, and she felt enveloped in a warm glow, and as she looked around, she saw a small star sparkling. I'm finally a Spirit Master! Ha ha ha! I'm at the initial stage of a Spirit Warrior, but this proves that my body isn't trash. Right after removing the poison, I can already manifest. What's this? This was unlike the previous times where, once she stopped manifesting, the light dispersed. This time around, resplendent rays of various colored lights poured out of the box. She couldn't help but reach out to the box in her stupor. Once she picked up the box, the lights all disappeared, and even the soft glow that enveloped it dissipated. She curiously opened the box, but found nothing out of the ordinary. Only the same 3 items that were in it before were present. There's nothing strange in here. What could have caused those lights to appear? She muttered out loud in puzzlement. Alex picked up the interspatial ring and the stone that was with it and inspected them closely. She poured in her spiritual power to inspect them separately and still could not find anything special. She put the stone down and then pricked her finger with a small knife, letting the blood drip on the interspatial ring. She stared at it intently, watching in marvel as her crimson blood seemed to have disappeared into the ring, although she had witnessed it touching the ring. She felt a sense of closeness and realized that her link with the ring had been established. Just as she focused her thoughts on the interior of the ring, she felt as if her consciousness was being sucked away into a different space. I'm inside the ring? Alex couldn't help but stare wide-eyed as she took in her surroundings. She was surprised to find herself standing in a space the size of a room, as she excitedly said out loud, "From now on, going out will be so much more convenient. I can store everything here." Her consciousness swept the entire room in its entirety, and she had a grasp of how it worked. As she retracted her consciousness, she heard a voice in her head cry out, "Ha ha ha ha! This little mister has finally woken up!" Alex was startled as she subconsciously asked, "Who is it?" "Huh?" The other voice paused for a while in silence. Suddenly, the voice exclaimed, "You don't actually remember me?" Alex scanned her surroundings and saw nothing. Where was the voice coming from? "I can't believe you actually forgot about this, little mister," the voice whimpered out indignantly. "Who are you?" "I am Little Roar. You really can't remember me?" A voice filled with grievance echoed in her head, which further confused her. "Little Roar? I don't know you," she said out loud. But, you were the one who named me," Little Roar cried out. While Alex was still in her stupor, a figure came out of her body and floated in front of her. "You are a rabbit?" Alex looked at it from head to toe, and after affirming it, she nodded contentedly. "Yes, a rabbit." "Rabbit? How am I a rabbit? I am Little Roar, the ancient sacred beast!" Little Roar yelled at her in exasperation. Alex felt embarrassed and asked, "Sacred beast? Little Roar? You finally remembered me?" Little Roar asked. "Not really," she seriously answered. "Then how do you know that I'm called Little Roar?" it asked earnestly. "Didn't you just say it yourself?" Alex carefully answered as she looked at this creature once again. This creature's IQ was way lower than a human's. "Oh, did I?" it replied. "How are you in my body? Also, you just mentioned that you finally awoken. What do you mean by that?" Alex, who was still speechless by the way the little rabbit appeared, could not help but ask. "I have a contract with you, so where else would I be other than in your body?" Little Roar asked. "Contract?" "That's right. We are bound by a spiritual contract, and although you died then, your spirit was still around, and I followed you here," Little Roar replied. "Why then did you not appear till now?" Alex continued to ask. "Didn't I just tell you? I was in a deep sleep," Little Roar explained. "You were hurt and the injury spread to me as well, so I was recuperating in my sleep. I did not expect you to have forgotten me when I woke up. Wow." Little Roar was so sad to the extent that he started sobbing. As the tears dripped onto Alex's body, an invigorating sensation of relaxation came over her. "Your tears are amazing," Alex exclaimed. "I am a charm beast. Of course you will feel good," Little Roar retorted. "Really?" Alex stared at Little Roar intriguingly and said, "You mentioned that you got hurt earlier. How did that happen? And how did we come to be bound by a contract? I don't remember having ever seen you." Wow. Alex, you are so detestable. I I don't like you anymore. How could you ever forget your adorable little Roar? Luckily, I entered into a spiritual contract with you earlier. Without that, I would never have been able to find you. Wow. But now, Alex has completely forgotten about Little Roar altogether. Little Roar wept sadly. Seeing Little Roar in such a state made sadness and sorrow suddenly overcome Alex's heart as well. She pulled Little Roar into her arms, gently stroking its fur, and said, "I'm sorry. I really can't remember. But I can feel the link between us. When you are sad, I feel it in my heart as well." Little Roar stretched out a short front paw and rubbed it over its face and said, "Maybe your spirit was damaged, and it has caused you to forget your previous life. I will go take a look." Upon finishing the sentence, Little Roar suddenly vanished from Alex's arms and quickly reappeared. But its face was looking rather concerned as it stared at Alex and said, "Your memories have completely disappeared. No wonder you do not remember me." "Memories? What memories?" Alex raised Little Roar before her eyes and asked. Episode 13. The Spirit Pearl. Alex was extremely confused. What memories was the Roar talking about? "It wouldn't help even if I told you. You will have to find those memories on your own," Little Roar replied. "Recently, I've been feeling that I'm missing some memories as well. Sometimes my mind feels a little empty, and I feel like I have forgotten something very important. But if it was that important, why can I not remember a thing about it?" Alex released Little Roar and put her hands on her head, as her face twisted in frustration. "Alex, don't get so frustrated. That will not help you get back your memories," Little Roar said. Alex turned to Little Roar and asked, "Little Roar, do you know of a way?" Little Roar scratched its tiny head for a while before it finally said, "I think it might be due to the damage that was done to your spirit. As your spirit gradually restores itself, you should be able to remember them again. But how do you restore the spirit?" "Eat things that are beneficial to the spirit and also manifest. Once you reach a certain level, you will be able to restore your spirit," Little Roar replied. Suddenly, Little Roar saw the stone in the box. It cried out in surprise and pointed at the stone. That is the Spirit Pearl." Alex saw Little Roar's agitated reaction and asked, "You know about this thing?" "Of course I know about it." Little Roar's eyes lit up as it moved closer to the Spirit Pearl in a flash. It stretched out its short paws and started caressing the pearl. One could almost see him drool. "My father said this was a divine item handed down from ancient times, and it will only acknowledge the destined one as its owner," Alex said. Little Roar was still caressing the Spirit Pearl as it nodded vehemently and said, Yes. A pity no one knows what kind of use this pearl has. Alex, come here quickly and see if it will acknowledge you as its owner. I have heard that this is a magical item of the highest divinity, and it would be great if you could gain its acceptance." "Really?" Alex looked at Little Roar skeptically. "Really? Come. Come and try." Little Roar placed the Spirit Pearl right before Alex, urged her on excitedly. Alex hesitated, but when she saw Little Roar's earnest face, which was beaming with excitement, she took the Spirit Pearl and said, "All right, I'll give it a try." Yup. Little Roar leaped on Alex's shoulder and said, "Alex, quick!" But Alex did not know what she must do to make the Spirit Pearl acknowledge her. Just as she was thinking about the kind of appeasement to offer, Little Roar suddenly came over and forced open the wound on her finger. There wasn't much blood, so Little Roar further placed her finger directly on the surface of the Spirit Pearl. At first, there was no reaction from the Spirit Pearl, because the blood had not melded into the pearl yet. And just as she was about to give up, the blood was suddenly absorbed into the pearl. She wanted to remove her finger, thinking that the process was already completed. However, she found out that she couldn't move it. Not only that, but Alex also felt as if her finger had been bitten, and an excruciating pain flooded her system as blood surged out of the finger. She started to feel dizzy due to the sudden loss of blood. In a moment, she lost consciousness and fell on the bed. As she was losing consciousness, she heard Little Roar calling out to her worriedly, and she cursed it in her heart. "You little con! You just killed me!" Alex did not know how long she slept, but she felt as if she had fallen into a deep, long slumber, and she was in a dream realm. In that dream, there was a mirror that reflected her past life as she stood in the abyss of darkness. Scenes flashed before her, one after another, and she stood there calmly, watching each fragmented scene as if it were a movie. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain in her heart, and she let out a blood-curdling scream. Xandra Schiappa. Today marks the downfall of the Schiappa family. They have been plotting against us for a long time, so you are not responsible for this matter. No one will blame you for this. Xandra, seeing your loved ones dying before you, how does that feel? Xandra, you have to live well. Xandra, no matter where you go, Little Roar will follow you. Xandra Schiappa, you must die. Alex stood in the abyss of darkness as she struggled to listen to the exchange between the gentle voice and the voice laced with hatred. She gritted her teeth and bore through the pain, feeling her heart being slowly torn apart. However, she tried her best to concentrate on listening to the voices. She wanted to know who the voices belonged to, but in the end, no matter how hard she tried, she could not pry her eyes open. It was as if something was restricting her vision. Ah! Alex forcibly flung her eyes open, and the restriction that blinded her eyes dispersed along with the dream. She was panting heavily, gasping for breath. Her whole body was drenched as if she had just been doused with water. Alex, you've finally woken up! You scared Little Roar to death! Alex was still feeling groggy when Little Roar, who was floating by her side, suddenly dashed and nuzzled its way into her arms, crying and wailing loudly. Alex snapped back to reality when she heard Little Roar's cries as she held him gently in an embrace. She touched his fur and coaxed. "Do not cry. Am I not fine already?" "It's all Little Roar's fault. If I had not made you try to bind yourself to the spirit pearl, this would not have happened at all." Little Roar sniffled and said in a self-deprecating tone. Alex hugged him tightly and planted a kiss on his forehead as she soothed him in a gentle voice. "Didn't you do it all for my sake? It was all for my own good, wasn't it?" Although the dream was very fragmented, the feelings she had for Little Roar seemed to have been cleared by fog, and she felt a whole lot closer to him. That feeling wasn't just a mere link based on a contract. It had a depth that made her feel as if they had been together for a long, long time. A special kind of bond had formed between them. She stood up with Little Roar in her arms as she looked around, trying to figure out where she was. She found herself standing in a strange new world, surrounded by mountains, lakes, fields, and a house. However, there were no signs of anyone else. Where is this? Alex couldn't help but ask in surprise as she observed her surroundings, realizing that they were nowhere near Pyron Town that she had some knowledge of. "Alex, a few moments ago when you fainted, a bright light suddenly appeared and it brought us here. I do not know where this is either," Little Roar replied honestly. "You are inside the spirit pearl," a childlike voice sounded out. "Inside the spirit pearl? Who are you?" Alex turned around and did not find a trace of anyone or animal nearby. A small figure slowly took form and manifested before her. A small child who appeared to be around 3 years old appeared. She had 2 red pigtails on her head and wore a red bib. Looking at the person and the sacred beast before him, she said, "I am the soul of the spirit pearl, and you are now in the world that exists within the spirit pearl itself." "The world that exists in the spirit pearl?" Looking at Alex and Little Roar's befuddled expression, the soul nodded and continued. "There is a world that exists within the spirit pearl. This world is similar to your world on the outside. But no, this world is much better than your world outside." She gave a proud smile as she corrected herself. Alex couldn't help but nod in agreement. It was indeed much better than the world outside. She could already feel that the spiritual forces in the environment were very dense, compared to those of the outside world. Even a novice like her, who could feel the spiritual forces without meditating, signified how much better these spiritual forces were. Also, not only were the spiritual forces denser, but the ground was also filled with many precious herbs. Where did these herbs come from? She couldn't help but ask as she stared at the myriad and vast quantity of precious herbs that were growing on the pastures that stretched beyond what she could see. These were all left behind by the former masters, and these herbs have been around for hundreds and thousands of years, the girl replied with a sense of pride. All those that can't grow for too long have been regularly cleared by me. The former masters? Yes, it's been hundreds and thousands of years ago. So long that I don't even remember some things, the girl said wistfully as she put on a faraway look and stared into the distance, deep loneliness reflecting in her eyes. Not knowing it was because of the bond they shared due to the contract, when Alex saw that she had a lonely and forlorn expression, she walked up to her and held her up in her arms. As she brought her closer to her face and stared into her eyes, she softly said, "Don't worry, we are here. With us around, you won't be alone anymore." The small girl was startled and stiffened when she heard that. But when Alex embraced her, she felt her warmth and slowly relaxed and let out a small cry. Yeah. Alex patted her head as she carried her in her arms. She walked towards the house and said, "Let's go have a look around." "Okay, sounds good." Little Roar, who was perched on Alex's shoulder, excitedly exclaimed in anticipation. Episode 14. Dormitory Mates. Alex walked towards the house and went in to explore, discovering many things the previous masters had left behind. There was also a study that housed a larger number of books than the book pavilion back of the Johnson residence. It had a huge selection of rare ancient texts, many of which have been lost with time. The girl said that this collection of books started from the first generation's masters, and that the large collection contained and reflected the accumulation of various predecessors in the changes of time. When Alex saw these books, she was ecstatic and excited for quite a while. Ancient texts have always been known to be more powerful. However, many of them have been lost with time, as knowledge slowly gets lost in transition. What got her excited was what the girl mentioned at the end. "Your soul is incomplete. You must have been gravely injured in the past. But don't worry, this spirit pearl has the ability to heal and mend your soul at the same time. It can also aid your manifestation." "It can also aid me in my manifestation?" Alex couldn't help but blurt out in excitement. "Try sensing the spiritual power in your abdomen." She did as she was told, and although she could not accurately control and visualize everything at her current level, she could still sense that the spiritual power was no longer just a mass of sporadic red spiritual power. There seemed to be the existence of a pool in there. At your current level, you still can't see it. But when you can, there's a small pool in there. That is what the spirit pearl has prepared for your manifestation. When you inhale the spiritual forces, it will attract all the spiritual forces and gather them there, using the ability to sort the various attributes apart. Now, you won't be able to understand it very well, but when you finally get to see it, everything will be clear to you. Alex stared wide-eyed at her and blanked out momentarily before coming to her senses. "You mean that when I manifest, I do not need to concentrate on which attribute to absorb, but I can simply absorb them all, and the spirit pearl would help me sort them out?" She really could not believe her windfall. It was simply a shortcut. "Yes," she calmly replied. Alex picked her up in a crazed fervor and smacked a large kiss on her cheek. "Yuck! That's so disgusting! There's so much saliva!" She wiped her cheeks with her hands as she gave her a disgruntled look. However, she could not hide the suspicious blush that appeared on her face and ears. Amused, both Little Roar and Alex laughed out loud. Alex gave the girl the name Little Spirit, and after she gained some understanding of the spirit pearl and how to use it, she returned to her own room. Upon returning, she remembered the matter she needed to attend at the academy. She quickly called her two maids in and discovered that 4 days had passed. Upon hearing this, she was startled and jumped up immediately. She quickly stuffed everything she needed into her interspatial ring and ran out. "Emery, just now? He used an interspatial ring, didn't he? Stella asked in disbelief. Emery, who was equally stunned, nodded back in a daze. It seems so. Then you mean that he can now manifest? Yes, and before he left, he still told us to manifest properly. They both looked at each other in confusion. That person, was that really him? He should be. Alex quickly dropped by to inform her grandfather about her lodging at the academy. She then headed back to the academy in the beast carriage. Thinking about the number of days she had missed and how late she was, she got worried that Sir Richard might not let her in. At Berksage Academy, the first-year students of the elite class were all having their lessons. When Sir Richard came into the classroom and saw the empty seat at the back of the class, a glint came into his eyes as he looked at the rest of the class and said, "It's been quite a few days since you all started attending our academy. By now, you should have a better understanding of how things work here. Also, those who are in this class are all who harness spiritual power, so I will not repeat all the basic information. Now, we will learn how to absorb spiritual forces into the body more quickly." At the end of the day, the first-year students all returned to their yard. These students were all who had topped the selections this year. They were the top talents, the cream of the crop, many of whom had attained the level of spirit warriors much earlier. As members of the elite class, the treatment they received was different from that of others. For example, the regular students all lived together in a big dormitory, where they had the privilege of staying in a cluster of 5 rooms per courtyard, and they all enjoyed the luxury of having a single room to themselves. Although the courtyard was not large, the facilities were not lacking. It was fully equipped with a kitchen, a bathroom, and a garden. Standing before the entrance to the dormitory, Sydney Fairchild was about to open the door when she found out that it had already been opened. "Sydney, how come you are always so fast? After classes end, you always rush back. Why don't you ever wait and walk back with everyone?" Behind her was a voice that was filled with short gasps and a string of complaints. Sydney turned and saw that it was her roommate, Michael Stern, who was followed by the frosty Andrew and gentle Brian. Michael was a very chubby person, and on the first day that everyone had met each other, he had self-mockingly told everyone that they could all call him Fatty Michael. "It wasn't you guys?" Sydney asked when Michael and the other 2 roommates arrived, frowning slightly. "What happened?" Andrew keenly sensed that something was wrong and asked immediately. Sydney turned her body slightly to show them the open lock and said, "I didn't do it." "Oh, does that mean that another of our dormitory mates has arrived?" Brian asked as he stepped forward and pushed the doors leading into the courtyard open. He said, "I'm rather curious. Who could it be?" As Brian stepped in, the others followed behind into the courtyard. As predicted, movements could be heard from the second unit on the right. In the room, Alex was cleaning the tables and chairs with a rag. Little Roar was lying on the table that had just been cleaned, as its mouth poured out a string of endless grumbles. "This place is so tiny, and they allocated only 1 to each individual. Compared to the place you stayed in before, this is a dump." "It's not really that bad. The space for learning is downstairs. Upstairs houses my bedroom. It's great. As long as there's a roof over our heads, it is good enough. What do you want a big place for?" Alex asked, stretching out her hand to rub Little Roar's tiny head. The houses here had 2 levels, and both levels belonged to the same unit. Little Roar rolled over the table and laid on its back, saying, "Alex, hurry up and regain your powers. Your spirit is incomplete, and it has greatly reduced my powers too. The current me is just so weak. These things can't be rushed," Alex continued. "Anyway, you're not that young anymore. Waiting for a few hundred years wouldn't make much difference to you anyway." "That's awful," Little Roar sighed and rolled its eyes. "Oh yes, don't forget. You must not reveal your identity to anyone. You are just an ordinary little bunny, all right?" Alex reminded Little Roar. Yes, I remember. You've told me not to reveal my identity several times already." "Don't worry, I will not cause any trouble," Little Roar said. "Glad you know," Alex said and proceeded to continue with the cleaning. 2 coughs sounded from outside. Alex turned to look and saw 4 people standing there. "Why, is it you?" Michael exclaimed in shock as he stared at Alex. You know our new dorm mate? Anthony asked. Yes, Michael said, staring hesitantly at Alex. He was looking as if he was scared he would pounce on him at any moment. Michael's family resided in the city's capital, and when it came to people with widely known infamy such as Alex, he would naturally know them. He had heard the rumor circulating about the fifth son in the Grand Palace not really being a straight guy. You guys are my new roommates? Alex said, smiling at them. When she saw Michael's fearful expression, Alex said, Michael, why are you looking like you've seen a ghost? Don't worry, I have no interest in you. Not interested? What does that mean? Michael thought. Hi, my name is Brian, and I am in the room to your left. Brian introduced himself, smiling at Alex. Andrew, first unit on the west side. Andrew said casually. Sydney, the room on your right, she said. I know about you guys. In the new student selection list, I saw that Andrew is a double-faceted spirit master, and Sydney, you are a trio-faceted spirit master, Alex said. She had not thought that her dormitory mates would turn out to be the most gifted students among the new students. And why did Sir Richard put a useless piece of trash among these elites? It's all right. You were staying in the second house on the west side. You don't need to say it. Alex looked at Michael and suddenly felt weak. We have all introduced ourselves, but you have not said who you are, Brian pointed out. My name is Alex, Alex simply said in reply. You are Alex? Didn't they say Alex was... Brian stared at Alex in terror, unable to control the expression on his face for a brief moment. Even Andrew's expression was a little bit strange. Alex, General Johnson's fifth grandson, Peruska Island's most useless piece of trash who's obviously inclined towards guys. Sydney unreservedly repeated the rumor about Alex as she looked at her. We've met. Now I'm going back to my room. Finishing her statement, she immediately turned to go to the unit beside them. What an icy girl. She was very beautiful, and now she had become a cool and aloof beauty. When she thought back to having seen her withdraw from all others and isolate herself during the selections, Alex could not help but feel that she was hiding a secret about herself. I'm going back too, Andrew also said and took his leave. Then, we welcome our new dorm mate, Brian said, laughing awkwardly. The teacher taught us quite a few things today, and I need to go back and revise. Bye. Alex stared at Brian's back as he fled in terror. Brian was a little suaver than others. Did he need to react so strongly? Was she really that terrifying? Then I will need to go back and catch up on manifestation, Michael said hurriedly, preparing to flee as well. Michael, stand right there. Alex stretched out her hand and dragged Michael back, pulling him by the collar. What do you want? When he saw the evil glint in Alex's eyes, Michael instinctively raised up his arms and crossed them protectively over his chest, his face stricken in abject horror. Episode 15. Gaining a Better Understanding. When Alex saw his reaction, she smacked him hard on the back of his head and yelled, With you looking like that, even if this guy's perverted, I won't choose the likes of you. Hearing this, Michael felt more assured and no longer wore the same horrified expression on his face as he quickly switched and put on an amicable smile and asked, May I ask why you stopped me, Alex? Alex grabbed him and pulled him into the room, closing the door behind them, and asked, Michael, are you familiar with the other three people? Do you know them well? Michael shook his head and replied, Sydney is a person of few words, and she likes being alone. Other than her name, she's never divulged anything else about herself. Alex touched her chin as she thought out loud. She has a cold expression, and she doesn't seem to like to interact with others. Andrew as well. Other than his name and that he is a double-faceted spirit master, we don't know anything about his family, his background, or even where he's from. Michael continued sharing. Damn it, why is everyone so mysterious? Alex couldn't help but be irritated. How about that last guy, Brian? He looks friendly. Alex, although he is better looking, I'd advise you to avoid getting involved with him. Michael quickly interjected when he saw the expression on Alex's face. Why? Alex asked in response before the underlying meaning became clear to her, and she smacked him hard on his shoulder and cried out, "Since when did I even say that I have any interest in him in that way?" "Well, your eyes were bright and sparkly when you spoke about him. Almost the same as when you look at Augustus," Michael answered as he cast her a contemptuous glance. "The past is the past. And now I'm a changed man, and I'm no longer interested in men." Alex couldn't help but cough slightly because she was embarrassed. "Enough of this talk. Now tell me, why should I not have any interest in Brian?" she demanded. Michael went on to explain that Brian had a powerful background. He comes from the lineage of the Beast Tamers. Tog is the largest Beast Tamer clan in the Calhoun City, and they hold a very prestigious status in the Nitya Kingdom. Even though your grandfather is the general, he is still not in a position to directly confront such a powerful Beast Tamer clan. It is said that Tog is the direct descendant of the most talented Beast Tamer, so you can imagine the status he has in his family, Michael explained. "Oh, so he hails from the Beast Tamer clan," Alex said as she finally let go of Michael and sat down. "What are his spirit attributes?" she then asked. "It's the rarely seen ice attribute coupled with wood," Michael said. "Ice attribute? I thought there were only metal, wood, water, fire, and earth for the various spirit attributes," Alex asked. "Those are just the more common spirit attributes." Michael knew how Alex had been before, and it was completely understandable that Alex did not understand it, so he went on to explain it patiently. "Beyond the basic 5 attributes, there are a few rarer ones. They are the ice, wind, and lightning attributes. However, these are very, very rare, so not many people know about them. It's said that, perhaps among 10,000 Spirit Masters, you may be able to find 1 or 2 with such rare attributes." "That rare?" Alex exclaimed. She could not help but gasp out loud. "Yes, and I've also heard that their attacks are especially powerful," Michael replied, sounding rather envious. "Why do you have that expression on your face, Michael? Are you envious?" Alex chided. She went on to remind him that as long as he worked hard, he could also become as strong. "Haha, true." Michael scratched the back of his head and looked down in embarrassment. "Well, now that I know more about the rest of them, let's talk about you. Tell me, Michael, what is your attribute?" she asked him. "Oh, I have a double attribute of fire and earth," he replied. "Fire and earth attributes? Wow, not bad, boy. Didn't know you had it in you." Alex was quite impressed with this. Michael wanted to roll his eyes. "Oh, please. In the past, you only knew how to chase Augustus around. When in the world would you have the time to care about a measly guy character like me?" Alex wasn't sure how to reply to that, but went on to ask. "I thought that multifaceted Spirit Masters were rare. How are there so many in this one dormitory?" "Yes, that's true. I've heard that there were even years where not a single multifaceted Spirit Master. And yet, this year alone, 4 such people popped up. There's even a trifaceted Spirit Master. What's even more coincidental was that the 4 of us were in the same group and were lined up consecutively. Andrew was the first who was tested. Next was Sydney. Brian was 3rd and I was 4th. You should have seen that teacher's reaction. He was shocked." Michael laughed as he thought back on the selection day. He was surprised that chatting with Alex was quite fun. She had witnessed the selection of Andrew and Sydney, and had left right after Sydney had been selected. She hadn't expected that right behind would be Brian and Michael. At the time of the selection, the teacher was ecstatic after he had tested Andrew and Sydney. Adding in the other 2 other geniuses behind, she could only imagine his excitement after that. If he knew that she was a perfect prism, what would his reaction be like? Would he have died of a heart attack on the spot? "But Alex, why are you in the elite class?" Naturally, Michael could not help but ask her. "What elite class?" Alex asked back in curiosity. She was confused by Michael's question. "That's our class," Michael said. He went on to explain. "Since we had the best results on election day, we are all in the elite class. Did you not know that?" "No, I had absolutely no idea. All I did was follow Sir Richard, and he brought me here and gave me the keys," she explained. "Is it because his grandfather is a general? So does he get preferential treatment?" Michael couldn't help but wonder. "Since Sir Richard gave you the keys, that means that you are a member of our class. But you'll have to be mentally prepared. The people in our class all have quite prestigious backgrounds. Most of them are nobles. That, coupled with their talent, means that they are very arrogant. Given your reputation, some people may not be able to take it, and it could cause trouble for you. He warned Alex seriously. Thanks for the reminder, Alex said. She smiled at Michael, thinking that this boy's heart was good. You're welcome, Michael replied. When Michael heard the word thanks come from Alex's mouth, he suddenly felt that it was rather surreal. In the past, they would have been utterly grateful if Alex had not tried to give them a hard time. They wouldn't have dared dream that they would be thanked at all. He went on, but as your grandfather is a decorated general of the country, people would normally be afraid to say anything against you. And you will only have to be extra careful of some who might come from highly distinguished families. I know it now. Alex nodded while she replied. Then I'll go back and get back to my manifestation, Michael announced as he got up. Go, and thanks again for giving me so much information. When I go back, I will get something delicious as a reward for you, Alex said, patting Michael on the shoulder. There is really no need for that. I will need to go now. When Michael heard that Alex was going to get him food, he immediately turned and ran. It was widely rumored that the food Alex prepared could poison a hardy spirit critter enough to bring it to its death. He was still young, and he did not want to die so soon. Little Roar peeked open its eyes and said, See? Didn't I do a good job? I didn't even say a word. Not bad. We'll do it this way from now on, Alex said, full of praise for Little Roar. Although Michael had said that he didn't need Alex to prepare him any food as a reward, it was very early the next morning that he was drawn by a delicious and enticing scent wafting out from the kitchen. When he got to the kitchen, his eyes widened in disbelief when he saw the figure bustling busily inside. Alex was finishing her last dish when she heard the door open. She turned and saw Michael standing there in a daze, and his mouth wide open. What happened? You really know how to cook? Michael said. Do you want to try and see if it's poisoned? She retorted. Academy classes started at 9 a.m. She woke up at the break of dawn and manifested for a while, before she began to prepare breakfast. She was very adamant about one thing, which was the fact that she needed solid food, good food, to keep her going through her day. In the past, unless she was out on field missions, she could forsake eating and nibble on snack bars, ration food, or pills. This was deeply etched in her, so she continued displaying her culinary skills here. While cooking, she had also thought about the others living in the same courtyard as her. They would be living together for a few years, hence she decided to include them in her food preparations as well. Michael quickly walked over to the table and sat down. Looking at the spread before him as he gulped a few times, he asked, Aren't these all restaurant food? This person was simply unbelievable. Was she that untrustworthy? He simply did not have any faith in her. If you do not want to eat, I won't force you. Her eyes narrowed with a glint while serving up the last dish. Ha, of course I want to eat, Michael quickly replied, sneakily stealing glances at the rabbit who was already nibbling on the table, seeing that it was well and alive with a blissful expression while eating. What's more, the aroma was so tantalizing. He knew that the food must be delicious. At this time, another person appeared in the doorway, and looking at the table full of appetizing dishes, he cried out in surprise. Oh, what a spread! It looks like there's no need to go to the Academy's cafeteria today. It smells amazing. Alex looked at the handsome, uninvited guest who happily sat himself down by the table and thought back on how he fled yesterday. She asked in an icy tone, You're not afraid I'll eat you up today? Brian's whole body stiffened when he heard her remark. But then he looked at the spread before him and he shrugged. I'm afraid, but let me eat first. Then I'll continue being afraid. Everyone who heard that was rendered speechless. Episode 16. Sir Richard Finds Out. This is your pet? Brian looked at the small, unassuming bunny and asked. When he heard Brian call him a pet, Little Roar was furious and glared at him. He was a spirit critter, an ancient beast, not a mere pet. One really could not blame Brian for calling Little Roar a pet. If he wanted to blame anyone, it would be Alex's infamous reputation for being trash. That label made everyone believe that he was unable to establish a contract with any spirit critter. And with Little Roar's fluffy and docile appearance, one certainly wouldn't link them together in any manner. It simply looked like an adorable pet kept for entertainment. Alex placed the last dish on the table, glanced at Little Roar, and replied, "Yeah, I've spent quite a lot of money to buy it." Little Roar, who had already eaten his fill, returned her look with a glance full of disdain and contempt as he jumped off the table and went out to the garden. Bought him? She cheated him into establishing a contract. What a liar! Looking at the expression he'd seen on Little Roar's face, Brian started to doubt himself. Was this just a pet? "All right, let's dig in," Michael quickly said as soon as Alex sat down. "Wait, what about the other two?" Alex asked. "No idea where they went. Every morning it's just me and Brian who go to class together," Michael said impatiently, completely disregarding the other two. "Is that so? What game are they playing? Acting so mysterious." "If you go to their rooms now, you won't find anyone," Michael said while stuffing his mouth. "All right then, let's dig in." Alex found that her instructions to dig in were completely redundant, as the food on the dishes was disappearing at a tremendous speed, while she had only just picked up her fork. She laughed and shook her head, as she saw the manner and speed these two were skillfully gobbling up all the food. After breakfast, she went back to her room to pack up and also let Little Roar go into the Spirit Pearl. Originally, critters had their own space, but he had complained it was too boring, so she brought him into the Spirit Pearl to let him play with Little Spirit. When she stepped out of her room, Michael looked at her empty hands and asked, "Where's your pet? You're not bringing it along?" "No, there's no need to bring him." Little Roar was in the Spirit Pearl, but when he heard Michael calling him a pet, he was waving his claws and screaming back, "You dare call me a pet? Michael, you'd better watch out. One day, this Little Roar will enlighten you." Little Spirit cast Little Roar a contemptuous glance and mumbled, "Bloodline is good, but the temper is a bit too shabby." Little Roar, who was still waving his claws in the air, froze instantly as he turned and stared at Little Spirit for 2 seconds. With a crash, he pounced on Little Spirit. Alex and Michael went to the class together, garnering a lot of attention, and those who knew who he had started whispering quietly behind their hands. "Why is he in our class? Isn't he trash? How can he be in our class? That's so unfair. We went through so much during the selections. How can a repeat student come to taint our class? Do you know him?" "Of course. He's just trash who can't even sense the spiritual power." "My God, he's actually such trash. How is he in our class?" "Isn't it because his grandfather's the general?" We're in the elite class and we study manifestation. Can he understand anything? Even if he can, he's just trash who can't even manifest. What can he do? He's just taking up extra space." "Haha, you're right." Alex glanced at those people. Although they were whispering, it was still easy to hear everything. Seeing that only the last row of seats were available, she walked behind and sat down. Those who were seated in front of her looked at each other and stood up, wanting to cause some trouble for her. But just then Sir Richard walked in. They angrily sat back down in their seats. Habitually looking at the last row of seats, he saw Alex seated there. He was surprised. "Alex." "Here." Alex was reading a book that was in the drawer, and when she heard her name being called out, she looked up. "Come out with me for a moment. I need to speak with you in my office," he said as he glanced at the other students, instructing them to review what you learned yesterday. Alex had some apprehension when she left the classroom with him as she followed him to his office. Thinking back on how she'd been late for classes for a few days, could it be that he was going to expel her? "Why did you only attend class today?" he asked, unable to detect any joy or anger in her. "It was because of this." She paused, took a deep breath, and replied, "There were some family circumstances, so there was a slight delay." He looked at her for a moment, as if trying to decipher if she was saying the truth. He seemed to be thinking of something when he suddenly said, "Come here." Alex had no idea what he was up to, but she still obliged and walked over to him. He stretched out his hands and grabbed her wrist. She was taken aback, and her eyes widened in surprise by this sudden movement. Only when she felt her wrist grasped by something cold did she notice that he had gotten hold of her. She was inwardly shocked and thought, what level is he? She had not even noticed that he had moved and he had already grasped her wrist. Sir Richard? She looked at him in a puzzled manner. What was this? Molestation? Seeing the expression of doubt and weariness in Alex's eyes, he let go and simply said, "You can go back." Alex was still confused, but since he did not mention anything else, it should mean that he was not going to investigate further. Sir Richard looked at her departing back, and his lips curled up as he murmured to himself. He started manifestation already, so it seems like this plan will proceed quite smoothly, very soon. Since Sir Richard did not mention anything further, Alex felt relieved, strolling back to the classroom in a relaxed manner. This tranquil moment was broken, however, when she heard Little Spirit's warning. You have to be careful. That person just now may have found out that you are already a spirit master. Alex froze for a moment before asking her, Didn't you mention before that with you around, I do not have to worry about people finding out that I can manifest? In general, she emphasized, I can conceal the spiritual fluctuations emitted from your body, and ordinary people cannot sense them. But that person just now was very powerful, and when he held your wrist just now, he did a probe. And I think he may have already found out. Why would he probe me? Alex gave it some thought before throwing it at the back of her mind. Now, what she needed most was time. She needed to maximize her time to efficiently and effectively manifest, since she had started much later than everyone else. As soon as she stepped into the classroom, the eyes of the students turned hostile, and there was a trace of mirth mixed in as everyone's gaze rested on her. Some had hoped that Sir Richard had kicked her out of class, and soon a string of curious gazes followed the slim figure walking to the back of the class. Alex ignored them and continued on, when suddenly, someone stuck a leg out. Everyone stared in delight, expecting her to trip and fall. Instead, all they saw was the slim figure walking smoothly across without any hitches, stepping on that person's leg very naturally, as if stepping on a stool. Ah! The person screamed out after she walked past, as she had deliberately made some adjustments and shifted her weight so that particular step had encompassed her whole body weight in it. Alex! Watch where you are going! Don't you know how to walk properly? The student screamed out loud in anger. That's the way I walk. She did not bother giving a second look, and completely disregarded the person as she strolled back to her seat. You! That student stood up and was about to storm off in her direction to teach her a lesson, when another student quickly said, Liz, the teacher's coming. Liz Sinclair saw him walking in, and she had no choice but to sit back down. She turned her head and glared at Alex, eyes full of resentment. Liz, don't you worry. Teaching that brat a lesson is as easy as pie. There'll be lots of chances to clean him up. Robin Lee said. That's true. So what if his grandfather's General Johnson? My Sinclair family is not afraid. A dangerous glint flashed in her eyes when she spat that out. Yes, although Alex has General Johnson watching his back, he doesn't have the backing of a great family. How can you even compare the likes of Mirage City's largest family, the Sinclair family? Robin scoffed. Quiet down, Sir Richard said as he faced the class of 35 students. Today, we will continue with what I taught you yesterday. Alex leaned in and listened with interest. While the rest of the class were furiously taking down notes, her hands were clasped together. Why aren't you taking down any notes? When Sydney had finished writing down the notes Sir Richard had given them, she noticed that Alex had not picked up her pen at all. Curiosity took over, and she took the rare initiative to speak to Alex. Alex was surprised for a moment as she looked over at Sydney. I've got them all down. Sydney looked at her clean notebook and looked back, with her eyebrows raised in query. Alex pointed to her head and tapped her temple. It's all in here. Looking at Sydney's skeptical expression, she carried on. Since I was young, once I've seen something, I can remember it. I've never forgotten anything once I've looked at it. I've memorized everything Sir Richard taught me. Sydney didn't bother her anymore, and the look of disbelief was still written all over her face. She went back to revise the notes that she had jotted down. Alex didn't think that Sydney would have sat in the last row. She was diligently reading the notes and quietly listening and concentrating hard on the class. However, she still gave off the same icy cold aura that separated her from everyone else, as if she had a barrier around her. This piqued Alex's curiosity. What could she have experienced that made her that way? It was as if she had a deep hatred buried within that even her eyes could not suppress. A day of the class passed by without any other hitches, as various manifestation theories and practical lessons were conducted throughout the day. After they finished class, Alex and Michael went back to their courtyard, and she lightly touched her rumbling stomach. She headed straight to the kitchen. While cooking, she could not help but let out a small sigh and lament the amount of time she spent making food, when she should be catching up with her manifestation. Don't worry, you can also manifest while eating. Little Spirit voiced out when she sensed what was troubling her. I can manifest even when I'm eating? How is it that I've never heard of such a wonderful method before? She asked. That's because you are ignorant, Little Spirit replied honestly, without any hesitation. Alex twisted her lips. This little girl. Couldn't she be a little more tactful? Well, she was an adult, and she was only a small brat, and she shouldn't argue with kids. She silently convinced herself as she asked, So, how do you manifest while eating? Alex wanted to improve her skills and practice whenever she could, even while eating. It didn't matter if she had to deal with the moody Little Spirit. She was adamant about learning all the techniques that would make her a better spiritual wielder. Episode 17. Up for the Challenge. Those plants that successfully absorb the spiritual forces in the air and store them are known as spirit plants. They were originally ordinary plants, but some have managed to absorb the spiritual forces and store these spiritual forces within, Little Spirit explained. Thinking of her past knowledge of photosynthesis, absorbing carbon dioxide and converting it into oxygen, she could also relate to the matter of plants absorbing spiritual forces. As long as you consume food that is imbued with spiritual forces, all the spiritual forces that were stored in them will be naturally absorbed by your body. Little Spirit carried on with her explanation. Really? She raised an eyebrow, her voice full of doubt. If it was so simple, why hasn't anyone else discovered this method? If things were so simple, I'm sure this would have caught on. It's because the spiritual forces here are too thin. There aren't enough spiritual forces for these plants to transform into spirit plants and flourish. So everything here in this world is only ordinary plants. So, of course, there's nothing special about them, Little Spirit replied, with undisguised contempt. Alex glared at her when she heard that everything in this world was simply ordinary plants. She felt her blood boil as she yelled back at her. Then why the hell would you tell me all these things? Such a moron, Little Spirit sneered. Even if everything in the outside world were all ordinary plants, that doesn't mean that the plants grown in the spirit pearl are. Huh? The sudden realization struck her as she bolted into her room, locked the door, and dove straight into the spirit pearl. As soon as she arrived in the familiar environment, she called out, What did you mean just now, Little Spirit? Little Spirit took her time as she slowly appeared before her. Feel the spiritual forces here. Alex closed her eyes and concentrated. She opened her eyes excitedly as she chirped. Such dense spiritual forces. Mm-hmm. Little Spirit puffed up her chest with pride. Of course, come along now, Little Spirit said as she turned around and led her along a small path. A small smile leaked out when she turned away from her. Alex quickly walked close to her as she looked around inquiringly at the new scene that was in front of her. There was a farm that had many different vegetables planted on one side, and on the other side were many animals. She gaped in bewilderment and asked, wide-eyed, How are all these animals here? These are all low-level animals who cannot comprehend anything despite living in such a great environment, enriched with rich spiritual forces. They can't manifest to be spirit critters, and they only know how to breed, causing me quite a bit of hassle to control the population, she said wryly. I I haven't even seen some of these animals in this world. How are there so many animals here? She couldn't suppress her curiosity and continued to ask as she looked at the huge variety of familiar animals that were in front of her. These were left behind by the former master. I have no idea where he caught them from. Anyway, since they've been living here all this time, even though they did not become spirit critters, their bodies are still enriched by the rich spiritual forces and have quite a vast amount stored within. All these vegetables, too, are all spirit plants imbued with spiritual forces. You can use them for your food. Alex looked at the familiar culinary ingredients, including spices such as pepper and cumin. Your former master couldn't have gone to Earth and robbed it, right? Who knows what he did? Anyway, he was a picky foodie like yourself. You can use them as you like, just remember to leave some behind. After saying that, Little Spirit disappeared. Alex watched Little Spirit dissipate away, and she could also feel a trace of loneliness that lingered in her heart, knowing that she must have missed the former master. Looking at the huge stock of ingredients in front of her, Alex felt an adrenaline rush as the excitement got the better of her. She could now feast on delicious food and still manifest at the same time. When she came out of the spirit pearl, she heard a burst of rapid knocks on her door. Who could it be? What had she done? She wondered as she walked to the door. Alex, are you in? After getting to know Alex for just one day, Michael had already dropped the honorifics and called her directly by her name. Alex opened the door and saw Michael's hands in midair, as if he was about to knock again. What's the matter? She asked. Thank God you are in. Go and get your brother now, Michael exclaimed as he hurried her on. What happened? Why did he suddenly ask her to go find her brother? Alex wondered. I was on the way back from the library when I heard that Liz is looking for you and wants to challenge you, Michael said quickly, trying to grasp his breath. He seemed both worried for her, but also a bit excited to be the bearer of such exciting news. Looking for me? Alex asked. She then thought to herself, Liz just couldn't let today's classroom incident go, could she? She was ranting about how a lowlife like you does not deserve to be in our elite class. She wants to challenge you and a bit to humble you back to the place where you belong. All right, I've got it, thank you, Alex replied. She wasn't acting worried at all. If she is really serious about challenging you, things may get out of hand. It is in your best interest to go find your brother, Michael insisted. Why do I need to go look for my brother? This is my problem, so I shall solve it myself, she replied nonchalantly as she relaxed and leaned lazily on the door. She appeared unconcerned about the gravity of the matter at hand. You may be the grandson of General Johnson, but the Sinclair family is not to be messed with. It's the largest and one of the most prestigious families in Mirage City. She is also a direct descendant, so she has always carried herself with pride. If she intends on challenging you, best believe she will keep her word. Is she very powerful? Alex asked. Michael wore a worried expression on his face and twiddled his thumbs in agitation and worry. When she was 13, she had already achieved the rank of a 5th-level spirit warrior. Is that very strong? She asked, looking at him calmly. Yes, it is an achievement to have been awarded that at her current age. Please stop dilly-dallying now and find your brother so that he can protect you, Michael urged her. Well, if she's out to find trouble, she will still come. Maybe not today, but someday. Michael, doesn't the Academy prohibit fighting? She asked curiously in an unhurried manner. There's a rule that prohibits fighting, but the challenge is different. As long as the challenges are officially fought on stage, then they're allowed. Many people who have personal grudges use this method to sort things out. What's more, the challenges are all life and death matches, where each party signs a death disclaimer before heading onto the stage. She is sure to exact her revenge on you for stepping on her leg in class earlier today. Now, the most important thing to do is hide as we plan what to do next. Hide? Alex gave him an incredulous look as she crossed her arms across her chest. There is no such word in my dictionary. I, Alex, do not recognize this word. But Michael was about to continue persuading Alex when the door of the next room was flung open. Brian stepped out and looked over at the two people who were in a heated discussion. What happened? He asked. Michael looked helplessly at Brian and explained, Liz Sinclair wants to issue a challenge to Alex. I'm trying to get him to find his brother, but he has refused. Michael was feeling exasperated at this point. Liz keeps looking for trouble. Brian was agitated when he heard this. He was not surprised, as he'd seen this before. Though most people did not want to deal with Liz or her powerful family, some had and had paid dearly for that. Michael, thank you for coming to warn me. I am very grateful for that. It is too late, however. She raised her chin and looked at the main door, as a group of students barged in, with Liz marching at the front as their leader. Alex, how courageous you are. When I saw Michael running off to tell you the news of the challenge, I was sure that you would have gone into hiding. I'm surprised that you've not run away with your tail tucked behind your legs. Liz sneered. Well, there's no need for the likes of you. Alex smiled provocatively as she gave her a contemptuous glance from head to toe. Not only was she not hiding, but she was also ready to come forward to defend herself against this ridiculous girl. You! Liz gnashed her teeth together furiously. She had always been the object of affection from everyone. She was loved and adored inside and outside of the courtyard. It greatly angered her that someone like Alex, one who would not compare in name or social standing, dared to talk to her in such a condescending way. I challenge you to a fight. If I win, you are never to set foot at Berksage Academy ever again. Alex was not in the least bit impressed by Liz's posturing and threats. You, a 5th-level spirit warrior, want to challenge me? All right. Let's say I am taking you up on this challenge. Tell me, Liz, what do I stand to gain if I win? Alex had not even bothered to look at Liz. Instead, she looked at her fingernails and studied them with apparent interest. At this point, Andrew's room door swung open and he stepped out. He had on his usual cold demeanor and cast a glance at the commotion in the courtyard before he left, without saying a word. Next, Sydney's room door also swung open, and she looked at Liz and frowned. Go and create your ruckus somewhere else. You are disrupting my reading. Sydney was so tired of all the distractions of such immature people. Alex looked at the departing back of Andrew and listened to Sydney's merciless words. Now, these two people somehow seemed to have a few common traits. When Liz heard Sydney's words, she momentarily lost her composure. A brief glimmer of fear crossed her face. She lowered her voice and glared at Alex menacingly. You, such trash who can't even sense spiritual forces, want to win against me? What a joke! She threw her head back in laughter as the others, her weakling followers, joined her in her mockery. A joke? Well, you may find it funny now, but be careful. You may find that you may not be able to laugh later. Alex's lips curled up, her voice laced with mirth. The onlookers looked from Alex to Liz to hear what the next reply would be. This was quite entertaining for them all. Huh, just say what you want, Liz scoffed. Alex looked in the direction of Sydney and said, I have no intention of disturbing my dorm mate. Since you are here to challenge me, then to make me take you up on your challenge, you must also give me something to stake this on. Let's do it this way. If, by a stroke of incredible luck, I somehow manage to beat you, all you have to do in the future is whenever you see me, you will have to stay out of my sight. If you're okay with this, then I'm up for the challenge. Fine. If you win, I will get out of your sight whenever I see you, and no longer stir up any trouble for you. But if I win, then you will have to leave Berksage Academy forever, Liz declared. Episode 18. A Different Weapon. All right, so it's set. Why don't you head over to the stage first? I'll come in a while. Saying this, Alex turned and closed her room door. She might as well end the conversation there instead of listening to another of Liz's threats. Alex! Michael did not have the opportunity to continue his words as he was shut outside. Let's go. We'll wait for her on the challenge stage. Liz gave a last glance at Alex's door as she left happily. She knew that she would win this challenge easily. The courtyard finally went back to its tranquility. Sydney gave a final glance at Michael, who was still standing outside of Alex's door before closing her door. Michael thought back on that morning's meeting with Alex's brother, Elijah, who had sought him out and had specifically asked him to look after his brother on his behalf. He never expected that, in less than a day, Alex would have already stirred up so much trouble. No, I have to call Elijah quickly. Michael's eyes had a glint of resolve in them as he ran out. After Alex closed the door, she heard Little Roar yelling at her from within the Spirit Pearl, clamoring to come out. With a thought, Little Roar appeared in front of her. "What's the matter?" she gently asked while she hugged him and ruffled his long furry ears. "Alex, you want to challenge that ridiculous girl?" Little Roar asked. "Yes, why not? Since people came specifically to provoke me, tell me, can I retreat?" Alex threw Little Roar into the air as he leaped in a beautiful crescent arc. And when he saw he was going to hit the wall, he swiftly twisted his body and flew back, to see her searching for something within her inner spatial ring. "What are you looking for?" "Weapons. I need to find a weapon for this challenge. In the ring my dad left me, there was only a pathetic selection of weapons." "You want weapons? I saw a lot over at Little Spirit's place," Little Roar reported. "Oh, really? Let's go have a look then." With a thought, they both entered the Spirit Pearl once again. As soon as they entered, Little Spirit appeared before them. "Come with me," she calmly said as she turned and led the way. It seemed she knew the reason for her arrival. "This is the former Master's weapon refinement collection." Little Spirit brought them to a room filled with a wide variety of weapons. "How many former Masters did you have?" After listening to Little Spirit's words, she could not hold back her curiosity. "There's only those few." Little Spirit disappeared right after. Alex had a good look at the weapons and found that the majority comprised of holy armaments. Sprawled across the wall were all the grand and majestic weapons, but finding an inconspicuous and low-profile weapon was rather hard. After going through almost all the weapons, she finally found a little dagger in its sheath at the far corner of the room. She picked it up and flipped it from hand to hand, feeling its weight, and finally said, "It's settled. This is the weapon that I need." After Alex left the room, Little Spirit appeared and took a glance, and when she saw the empty spot at the far corner of the room where the dagger used to be, she was surprised. She actually chose that weapon, and it did not resist. To think that all the former Masters did not manage to gain its acknowledgement. Yet, a girl who had just embarked on the path to manifestation had managed to gain its approval. Or could it be that her future would be a long and arduous path, threaded with obstacles? Alex took the dagger out and removed it from the sheath. She was dumbfounded. Little Roar was laughing hysterically while sprawled in the ground. He held his stomach and wiped a tear from his face. "Alex, you took such a long time to choose a weapon. And in the end, out of all the fine weapons in there, you actually picked out a rusty dagger?" Alex stared helplessly at the dagger in her hands. Although it felt all right in her hands when she unsheathed it, other than the handle being wrapped in leather, the entire blade was covered in a layer of rust. How was she going to use this for the challenge? At this time, a male student ran to their courtyard and hollered out, "Alex, Liz has asked me to remind you that the challenge is starting soon. If you are not going to do this challenge, it's best to start packing your things and scram." After saying what he needed to, he turned and left. Although Liz was not afraid of Alex's grandfather, General Johnson, that didn't mean the others felt the same. If they were caught later by Alex, their future would be bleak. When Alex heard the message, she sighed and said, "Now I don't even have time to polish it. We'll just use what we have then. Although it doesn't look nice, it still fits well in my hands." Little Roar threw her a look of contempt. "Any other weapon would be better than that." "What do you know? A weapon and a person must resonate. If I simply pick any weapon at a critical juncture, it might just drag me down," she mumbled and sheathed the dagger and continued to argue in defense. Also, for some weapons, in the hands of different people, a different power may be unleashed. She blinked for a moment as she stared at the dagger. For a moment there, she thought it moved on its own. It must have been an illusion. "Well, that's what you said the last time as well. then, you've still not found a weapon that you're happy with, Little Roar complained. He looked at the dagger with disdain. In Alex's past life, she had never found a suitable weapon, and she was always searching for that one weapon. Now, in her present life, how did she end up with such a dilapidated weapon? Looking at the reality before him, his heart felt cold. Alex saw Little Roar's expression and felt a slight chill in the back of her skull. What was this expression? Did he despise her weapon or her? And what's with the sullen expression and the feeling of sadness that was welling up within her? Do you want to go back? She asked. No! I want to stay outside and see you thrash that ridiculous girl with my own eyes. I've not seen you for such a long time. I don't want to go back. He shook his head vehemently. All right then, let's go. She tucked the dagger safely into her belt and carried Little Roar out. As the whole world knew, she couldn't manifest. She couldn't put the dagger in the interspatial ring now. Not yet. When she heard the neighboring door open, Sydney glanced out her window and shook her head before she continued reading the book in her hand. Alex! Alex stopped in her tracks. She had just stepped out of the courtyard and she heard Brian call out from behind. Brian, do you need something? Nothing. He shook his head. I'll accompany you to the stage. No matter what the results are, you should have someone accompany you there. As they walked towards the stage, it attracted the attention of many as people started pointing at them and talking in hushed tones. Alex and Brian were walking past, and these careless whispers and insults were just thoughtlessly being thrown out, thinking that they couldn't hear them well. However, each word was heard clearly, and Brian flushed red with anger. But when he saw that Alex walked on leisurely as if he heard nothing, Brian could only hold it in and walked alongside. Aren't you angry? Brian asked through his gritted teeth. What's there to be angry about? The dogs that bite are the quiet ones. These barking dogs only know how to make noise. The best way to shut them up is using strength to speak. Challenge stage? This should be it. Alex read out loud in the words that were hung on the signboard above. Before she had even stepped inside, she could already hear the noise spilling out here from inside. Seems like Liz had gathered quite a several people to watch the battle. Around the challenge stage, the seats were all filled. Most of them were here to see how Alex was going to be defeated. Many couldn't wait to see him being humiliated. They wanted to watch the show and see how he ran away with his tail tucked between his legs. Although, in terms of status, they couldn't compare him to Alex. They wanted to witness with their own eyes his defeat and his expression at the moment of defeat. Ha! Alex is going to be kicked out of the academy. And has Augustus arrived yet to witness this spectacle? Yes, I see Augustus's group. They're seated in the front row. Everyone looked towards the direction he was pointing at. And sure enough, in the middle of the first row, Augustus and Carly Brown were seen seated together. Augustus, Alex will come, right? Carly asked gently with an air of noble arrogance. Even if he does not come, I have my ways to make him disappear from the academy. Augustus spat out with disgust. I thought that he'd already been expelled from the academy. But who knew he actually joined the freshman class after the new year started? If he dares to harass me again, don't blame me for being ruthless. Augustus, my brother-in-law, you can rest assured that piece of trash won't harass you again, Kelvin said with an insidious smile. Oh, Kelvin, what nonsense are you saying? Carly nudged her brother with a faint blush on her face. She was still shy about being out in public with Augustus, since their relationship had become official. Why are you still so shy? Since both of you have become a couple, all that's missing is a wedding. In my heart, Augustus is already my brother-in-law. Isn't that so? My brother-in-law? Kelvin teased Augustus unabashedly as well. Augustus did not say anything, but he also didn't deny anything. Oh, look! That trash finally appeared! Following that outcry, everyone's gaze darted to the entrance, and Alex was seen strolling in with Brian. Standing on stage was Liz, and when she saw Alex enter, she raised her hands, and the entire challenge ground immediately quieted down. You've made me wait for so long. I thought that you had escaped already, Liz taunted as she sneered at Alex. Why would I have done that? You've given me such a rare opportunity to make yourself disappear from my sight in the future. How could I miss out on such a good deal? Alex took a look around the arena and saw that it was packed. What a huge crowd. Seems like a lot of them came here, seeing her as a joke. Since you're here already, enough nonsense. Faster, come up, Liz said impatiently. She couldn't wait to teach that waste a lesson. She had already spent so much time waiting for that piece of trash, and he still had the cheek to be late. I'll wait for you in the stands, Brian said. There's no need to. I'll finish this quickly. Just wait here for me, Alex replied as she walked towards the stage with unabashed confidence. Episode 19. Flash Fight. All right then. Brian nodded and stood beside the challenge stage and watched her step forward. Liz looked at Alex, and with a voice filled with contempt, she snickered. If I were you, to save respect for my family name, I'd just directly throw in the towel. Why should I? Because I will beat you up until you admit defeat. Everyone here will witness General Johnson's grandson beaten miserably to a pulp, and the whole Johnson family will be put to shame. Your whole family will become a huge joke. Wow, so you're confident that you can defeat me? Alex raised her eyebrows in a taunt. Liz puffed up her chest and answered, Of course, her whole self brimming with confidence. Alex! At this time, Elijah and Michael frantically ran in, and when Elijah saw that Alex was already standing on the stage, he was struck with fear and felt as if his soul had left his body. Alex, what are you doing up there? Quick! Come down now! He was shouting at her as he ran in. Alex, you come down. Michael was panting heavily as he gasped for his breath. Elijah, why are you here? Alex looked at the two figures dashing towards her, guessing that it was most probably Michael who had called him. Before she left, she hadn't seen Michael and thought that he was in his room. She didn't expect that he had gone to look for her brother for help. This friendship she noted down thoroughly. Looking at the panic-stricken two, she beamed widely and said, Elijah, I'm now already standing on the challenge stage. Unless there's a winner, no one can step down. Unless I admit defeat. If not, I can't come down. On the way here, she had already heard about the rules from Brian. Elijah wanted to ask her to directly throw in the towel. Safety was his priority. That... Alex interrupted. Elijah! She already knew what Elijah wanted to say and stopped him. For the reputation of the Johnson family, I will not run away. And I will never let our family suffer another humiliation because of me ever again. Hearing the words of Alex, the people present were shocked. Was this the same cowardly Alex? Alex. Elijah looked at the blinding smile she gave. His young brother had really changed. Don't worry, nothing will happen to me. She gave a superfluous smile next and casually gave a victory sign to her brother. She turned and faced Liz. Let's start. Liz looked at the people standing below the stage and immediately snapped. Since you cannot manifest, I'll let you use a weapon. Quick, bring out your weapon. Little Roar was in Brian's arms, and he was squirming with excitement when he heard Alex demand that they begin. However, after hearing Liz asking her to bring out her weapon, he froze and covered his eyes with his little paws, burrowing deeply into Brian's arms. Brian was puzzled at the little furball's reaction in his arms. Just a moment ago, it was squirming in excitement, and the next moment, it just held still with its eyes covered. When Alex took out the dagger from her waistband, it looked as if it was simply wrapped in a cloth. A burst of laughter broke out when she removed the cover. Ha 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 ha! Has the prestigious Johnson family run out of weapons? Or have they gone bankrupt? Don't they even have enough money to get a decent weapon? He wants to use a rusty dagger to fight against the Spirit Master. What a joke! This is hilarious! Ha 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 ha! Boisterous laughter filled the arena. Elijah looked at the dagger in Alex's hands, and he cringed. He wanted to follow Little Roar and cover his eyes in embarrassment. This rusty dagger? Could it even be called a weapon? Liz was speechless when she saw Alex pull out her rusty dagger. She was stunned for a moment and broke into a smile. Alex, you have no spiritual power. Yet you dare to swagger in front of me with this piece of junk? Don't tell me this rust will absorb my spiritual power. Alex had guessed that bringing out that dagger would have brought about such a reaction, but she liked how the dagger felt in her hand. The handle was comfortable, and she decided that when she got back later, all that the blade needed was just a good polish. In the face of all the ridicule, she simply brushed everything aside as noise and looked Liz directly in the eyes. There was a dangerous glint in them as she smiled. Let's start. If she hadn't fought Lincoln Walker previously, she wouldn't have been so confident. Fighting him had given her the experience of fighting a spirit warrior and insight into how they fought. She had analyzed from her experience that they first needed to gather and condense their spiritual power, and that was her key to attaining victory. This short time frame was her window, and she just needed to grasp it well. A referee was on stage, and once he announced start, Liz immediately started to converge her spiritual power on her hand. Alex simply stood still, and everyone thought that she was scared and had frozen there in fear. After all, Alex was well-known trash, and when he saw spiritual power, he would be scared. Ugh, why isn't he moving? Michael cried out in anguish. If he's not going to make a move, Liz will finish condensing all her spiritual power very soon. Brian was frowning and baffled at why Alex had not moved an inch. Moreover, there wasn't any trace of fear on his face, only a confident smile. Elijah was just standing at the side of the stage, his eyes fixated on Alex as he watched John nervously. With his two fists clenched tightly, he was in a stance showing that he was ready to help. If Alex was in any real danger, he was ready to rush to her aid. Everyone was anticipating that Alex would be badly wounded and riddled with injuries. They had knowing smiles, but very soon, those smiles froze in place as their eyes bulged in shock. As Liz was about to successfully converge the spiritual power, Alex suddenly moved and dashed towards Liz at an astonishing speed. In just a mere few seconds, he had closed up a gap of more than 10 yards and had appeared behind Liz. The moment Liz saw Alex rush towards her, she threw her rationality behind and threw out the incomplete condensed ball of spiritual power at Alex. Looking gleefully at the energy ball that was just about to land on Alex, she saw him twist strangely and completely dodge the energy ball. Boom! The spiritual energy ball landed on the challenge stage with an explosive boom that rocked the stage. Before Liz could come to her senses and gather her thoughts, she felt something cold on her neck. You've lost. Alex's faint voice came from behind. Everyone was stunned. Alex was standing behind Liz with his hand wrapped around her shoulders, and his rusty dagger was pressed against her delicate neck. How did you get behind me? Liz asked with shock, her eyes wide with surprise. By running with my legs, Alex replied dismissively. Although this dagger is rusty and maybe somewhat blunt, if I use some strength, I think I can still slit your throat with it. Or maybe I can draw a few lines on your face. What do you think? She lifted the rusty dagger and lightly traced the contours of Liz's face. Liz shook with fear when she felt the cold blade touch her face. Ah! Do not touch my face! I admit defeat! Liz shouted out with teary eyes, leaving the whole stand of spectators completely shocked once again. Liz actually lost to that trash. How did that trash appear behind Liz? He was just lucky. If it was a proper battle, I'm sure Liz would have definitely defeated him. He won? That trash won this round, so does this mean he is still her classmate? Oh my god. Alex let go of Liz and sneered. Since you've thrown in the towel, you have to comply with our agreement. Next time you see me, you have to make a detour and take a different path. I don't want to see you again. And if you still come and look for trouble... She did not complete her sentence and trailed off at the end, but the meaning behind it was evident. Liz was full of resentment when she looked at Alex casually picking up her sheath, sliding in her rusty dagger, and swaggering off the stage. There was no other way Liz could go about it with so many eyes on their match today. If she didn't comply with the agreement, then she would be digging her own grave if she still went to look for trouble. One thing about the people of this world was that they all kept to their promises. They hated and despised people who went back on their word, so honoring the bet was the only thing she could do. So fast? Everything's over? Michael saw Alex stroll down the stage leisurely and walk over to them. What do you think? She laughed when she saw the dumbfounded expression Michael had on. That foolish look made her reach out and poked his fat belly in amusement. Only when Elijah saw that Alex was completely fine did his heart completely relax. Once he relaxed, the suppressed rage erupted from within. How can you easily accept such challenge? For goodness sake, this is a life and death challenge. What if something happened to you? He roared at her in a thunderous voice as he held her firmly by her shoulders and shook her in anger. Elijah, look at me. I'm fine, aren't I? She leaned towards him and held his hand. Her voice in a coaxing tone, she sweetly told him, All right, everything is over. Whatever you want to say, we'll say it when we get back, okay? There are too many people here. You still know shame, he snorted. Come on, let's head back first, Brian interjected, as he felt a lot of strange glances fixed on their group. Let's go. On the way back, Elijah nagged her nonstop. He kept harping on how she should not disregard her safety. If there were any problems, always look for her allies, and they would help her. After hearing the same thing for the umpteenth time, Alex looked at him seriously and said, Elijah, I have grown up, and I cannot always rely on you guys to protect me. You are my family, and you have all given me warmth and love. It is my turn to protect all of you. I want to be stronger so that I can protect the people I care about. If I shrink away from such a challenge, it means giving up on myself. Tell me, how can the heart of a coward be strong? You've really grown up. Elijah patted Alex's shoulder helplessly. He couldn't decipher the mixed emotions he was feeling now after hearing those words. Was he happy that she was now grown up? Or sad that she no longer needed their protection? After all, his baby brother, who had been called trash all his life, had now grown up, was now able to not just manifest, but even win in a challenge against Liz Sinclair. Elijah was proud, extremely proud. But he also missed his baby brother who was a little child. Does he not need me anymore? Elijah thought to himself. Episode 20. The Dagger Speaks. Alex sensed Elijah's complex emotions and held his hands and leaned her head on his shoulder as she gently said, No matter what I become, I'll always be your baby brother. You are all my brothers, and we're forever a family. Elijah patted her head as he smiled. We'll always be together. Ew, can you guys not be so mushy? This is so nauseating. Michael rubbed his arms in a shiver in exaggeration. Just now, he had heard the touching words and had turned to look at them. However, when he saw them stuck together so closely, he cried out, Don't tell me you were interested in your own brother. Alex broke away from her brother and kicked Michael as she rebutted him harshly, yet teasingly. Michael, go die. Michael dodged her attack, and of course, this was possible only because she did not have any intention to really attack him. Or else, with such skills, he would never be able to escape her clutches. Count yourself lucky that you've managed to dodge in time. Alex touched her stomach and gave a goofy grin. I'm famished. Let's go back and eat. After getting back to their courtyard, Alex prepared a few simple dishes and everyone dined together. After polishing up everything on the table, everyone returned to their own rooms. Alex shut her door and went to retrieve a block of whetstone from the spirit pearl, preparing to polish the rust off of her blade. Just as she was about to start grinding it, she heard Little Spirit screaming at her in condemnation. You fool! What are you doing? There was a shriek mixed in with Little Spirit scolding. Hence, that shriek couldn't belong to Little Spirit. Alex looked at Little Roar, who had the same puzzled expression, so she also ruled him out. Before she could even continue her train of thoughts, the scene around her had changed, and she had already been pulled into the spirit pearl and Little Spirit was floating in front of her. Didn't you say that I can only enter with my thoughts? How did you manage to pull me in? She asked in a disgruntled tone. Little Spirit gave her another condescending glance and said, Those rules are only for the general spirit artifacts. Stronger artifacts that are more powerful, like me, have the ability to take the initiative. Oh, all right then. She touched her nose and asked again. So, why did you pull me in here? What was all that screaming about? Really an idiot. Little Spirit couldn't help but think that, out of all of her previous masters, Alex was the most stupid one. She then thought back and tried to figure out how their destinies had intertwined together, having recognized her as a master. Alex gently knocked her knuckles on Little Spirit's head and asked in a dissatisfied tone, "Are there spirit artifacts like you who despise their own masters? If I keep seeing you with this same expression on, I'm just going to throw the spirit pearl into a fire and roast it." "I'm just speaking the truth," Little Spirit answered nonchalantly. Not a trace of fear could be found in her voice. "All right, just tell me the main reason why you interrupted me and pulled me in here for." After the words had left her mouth, an image entered into her mind, and, with a thought, a chair appeared before her. She had already grasped how things worked here. Her thoughts worked magically here. Whatever she wanted, all she needed to do was to conjure up the image in her mind. And with a simple thought, it would appear. Her thoughts were akin to God's power in here. Whatever she wanted would simply manifest before her with a single thought. When Little Spirit saw how fast Alex had grasped onto how things worked here, she furrowed her furry brows. "Oh, stop dawdling and quickly spill the beans. Hurry up and say it." Little Roar, who was beside her, couldn't take the suspense anymore, and quickly urged Little Spirit impatiently. Little Spirit still did not answer them. She went to stand before the dagger and poked it with her chubby hands. "Have you played enough? When are you going to drop all this pretense?" There was no movement from the dagger. "Continue on with this farce, and I'll really let her polish you with this whetstone," Little Spirit threatened. This threat seemed to have worked better, and the dagger above the whetstone shook gently, trembled a couple of times, and suddenly shot up above Little Spirit's head. Without any warning, it whacked Little Spirit's head. A voice sounded out. "You dare to polish me? I will chop you up into pieces." Little Spirit's wrath was ignited, and she no longer paid any heed to Alex, immediately lunging for the dagger. Alex and Little Roar watched on speechlessly as the scene played out in front of them, both still in shock as they watched the two fighting each other, while each threw blatant threats at the same time. "This dagger can speak?" Little Roar asked in astonishment. "Do you know what's going on?" Alex asked him. "Nope, no idea," Little Roar answered very simply. "Didn't you say that you were an ancient sacred spirit critter and you know everything?" She looked at him with contempt. "Oh, I'm just a descendant of the ancient sacred spirit beast. I've not lived for thousands of millenniums, so how would I know? What I meant when I said I know everything was referring to my heritage. I have nothing to do with Little Spirit here, so how would I know anything about her?" Little Roar quickly evaded her eyes, but at the same time, he let out a little sigh. He had also mentioned this to her before, but now that her soul was damaged, she held no memories of the former. After watching the two for a while more, Alex asked, "When are two of you going to stop fighting? Can someone tell me what's going on?" When the dagger heard Alex's voice, it flew over immediately and floated in front of her. A tender voice sounded out. "Alex, do not use the whetstone to polish me, okay?" She poked the dagger in front of her in curiosity and asked, "You're covered in such a thick layer of rust. If I don't use a whetstone to polish you, tell me, how am I to use you? More importantly, you're a dagger. How can you talk?" Alex turned and commanded, "Little Spirit, come over here and tell me what's happening." With her sudden change in temperament and her aggressive tone, both Little Spirit and the dagger were shocked. "It's not an ordinary artifact," Little Spirit explained. "I can see that. Now quickly, tell me the main points. What is this thing?" Alex rolled her eyes in annoyance. "I'm not a thing. I'm a supreme artifact," the dagger yelled out in defense. "Not a thing?" Alex was surprised at the dagger's defense, and at the same time, she was also surprised by what had been said, claiming that it was a supreme artifact. "You are a supreme artifact? The supreme artifact is obviously me," Little Spirit retorted at once. "I am the supreme artifact. I'm more powerful than you," the dagger countered back. "I'm more powerful," Little Spirit said. No, I'm more powerful. Enough! Both of you stop fighting. Can you just explain to me what's going on? In the end, what is this thing? She had to stop their childish banter. The way things were going, if she didn't interrupt them, they might have gone on till the next day. Alex, I've already said that I'm not a thing, the dagger said, as if being wronged, and the voice was full of grievance. I've already said I'm a supreme artifact. I'm the supreme artifact, Opus Obsidian. When Little Spirit heard the dagger claim itself to be a supreme artifact, she wanted to retort, but was silenced by a deadly glare from Alex. All she could do was swallow back the words she had wanted to say. Opus Obsidian? What kind of a weapon is that? Alex asked, her curiosity piqued. It means Opus Obsidian, Opus Obsidian simply said. I was born in the beginning of time, when the heavens and earth were made. I was fashioned from a piece of the mystical rock Opus Obsidian. A god picked me up and refined me into an artifact. But before he picked me up, I had already formed my awareness and had my own consciousness. When he was refining me, I was cut up into pieces and melded under high pressure and intense heat. Going through all that excruciating pain made me lose my consciousness, and when I awoke, I had already become like that. It pointed at the dagger. Why did he make you into a dagger? A dagger's attack power isn't as good as other weapons, Alex asked. This is not my original form, Opus Obsidian said. But this is the only form I can show now. So, you mean to say that you can change into other forms of weapons? Alex asked excitedly. Of course! Since I am a supreme artifact, I have great abilities. Opus Obsidian's voice became proud and continued. I can change into any weapons. Spear, saber, sword. Whatever you want me to turn into, I can become it. As long as it's a weapon, I can turn into it. This shows that you are still not as good as me. Only weapons. Little Spirit stuck out her chest and boasted. Alex looked at the dagger with sparkling eyes and asked, Can you change into another weapon for me to have a look? This transformation is controlled by my master. Alex, I like you very much. I'll acknowledge you to be my master. Acknowledge me to be a master? This weapon also needs to establish a link? Alex asked. What an idiot! Without establishing a link, tell me if you can enter the Spirit Pearl. Little Spirit retorted. Alex stared at Little Spirit and frowned. This kid had been scolding her a lot recently, calling her stupid, this and that. Since when was she stupid? She was just very unfamiliar with this world. The dagger patiently explained. In this world, spirit artifacts need to establish a link with their masters. This link will also play an important part in drawing out the powers of the spirit artifacts. The closer the bond, the more powerful the spirit artifact. Oh, I didn't know that. All right then, let's establish a link and get this acknowledgement thing going. Alex clapped her hands in excitement.